Hello there folks, welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now whilst I'm up here at Oak Camp, I'm encouraging you to drop me a line, ask me a question and you'll get my observations from my campsite. And today the question comes from RS 4249. I'm sure you know who you are. And the question is, how can we encourage younger men to dress properly? And it's a really good question because in this era of what we might describe as rapid cultural shifts, the way that young men dress has become dictated by a different path to what it used to be just not even a generation ago. Today young folks, they dress for comfort more than anything else, for conformity. You know, if a new garment or a new shoe particularly, or a new brand becomes the brand to have, if you don't have it, if you don't wear it, you are seen as outside the circle of social acceptability. And you know, this is why people find themselves dressing with a herd mentality, rather than just a generation or so ago, when dressing well for a gentleman was not just expected, it was aspirational. Because you would look at the people who had done well in the last generation and you would think, well, you know, that's a man who's achieved something in life. He is smart. He might be a surgeon, a banker, you know, somebody who's successful as an entrepreneur. And typically, as one got more successful, the quality of one's clothes improved. You know, you might start off as a young fellow going to the local department store. Here in the UK, you know, you're probably going to cross the threshold of Marks and Spencer, the country's most ubiquitous department store, to buy your first suit, your first shirt, your first tie. And then you would move up through the ranks, maybe made to measure when you got up into management. And when you really got there, you could walk down the hallowed pavement of Savile Row and into those great stores like Henry Poole, Norton & Son, Huntsman, Dedge & Skinner and so on, and get yourself a suit made for just you, a bespoke garment. But that has seemingly all gone. And us chaps who look at the young generation coming up now, you know, we look at them to a degree with a sense of disappointment, with a sense of sadness. And we look at them and think, God, if that's the way they're dressing now, what are people going to be dressing a generation from where we are right now? If to a young man of the modern era, wearing sneakers, jeans and a sweatshirt is considered to be putting on nice clothes to go out for an evening, where do we lie in the future? Because a generation ago, those clothes were for working in or going to the gym in. Now they're considered acceptable to wear to the office, to the workplace. So things have slipped a great deal. And I like RS 4249's question. Right? It's making an assumption that us gentlemen, we're not like that. We are of the generation where dressing was aspirational. We want to get better. We want to look our best. So how do we encourage the generation coming after us to dress not like their peers, but dress like their forebears, the ones who came before them, who dressed rather well? And because it means something to dress well too. It is not just about looking good. It is about those inalienable qualities of self-respect, self-expression, and a demonstration of one's maturity, capability, and professionalism. Because clothing gives us that in the way that we dress. And I think it is so sad to see the generation of the modern era who, not all of them, I mean some of them are decent folks who know how to dress well and understand the value of it, but many of them have foregone that for the conformity of the modern era. And I think the question which I look at here, you know, how do we encourage them to dress better? How do we encourage young men to take pride in their appearance? To walk through life with more poise because their clothing gives them that confidence? Well, I think the key, truly, is to encourage them. It's not to guilt them into dressing differently. It's not to force them or impose upon them the requirement to dress in an outdated way which doesn't feel right for these guys for the modern era. You know, you don't want to, as I say, guilt somebody into having to wear a tie because in the workplace where you are, you keep bugging the younger guy, where's your tie? You should be wearing a tie. And, you know, they're just going to wear a tie because you keep moaning about it, and they are going to hate the tie more than they ever did before. So your mission to build sort of sartorial maturity in the coming generation has actually been knocked back a little bit. It's not been brought forward. So we have to be careful in the way that we do it. You know, we need to be meaningful in the way that we ask people to dress and encourage them. So I've put together 3 actionable tips which us, and I'm making the assumption if you're watching this, you're an older gentleman who has an appreciation of sartorial maturity. So this is how I suggest we bring the next generation on. Firstly, lead by example, but without preaching to this current generation. Because the most powerful influence in life to bring people along with you in any endeavour is the example which you set as you go through life. You know, when older men, maybe the senior people in the office that they work, or the people that they encounter socially, they might be coming to a club or a church or whatever, you know, you are in the same space as these people. If a younger chap consistently sees an older gentleman dressing with dignity, with sartorial style, he will come to see that as an aspirational way to dress. Now, this doesn't just go for men, incidentally. If you're a woman watching this and you fear for the way that the female generation of the modern era are choosing to expose more and more flesh or dress in, you know, ways which are less elegant, you can do the same. It is about leading by example, consistently being the person that they see as being very well dressed. And it, you know, be it something as simple as wearing a sports jacket, when you have a works get-together, a drink after work, maybe there's a social gathering every so often, a lunch or something of that nature. Just by putting a sports jacket on, maybe just a pair of polished leather shoes. These little signature pieces are all it takes to capture the interest of a generation who don't wear any of these things, don't own any of these things. It sets the message to this this generation, that dressing well is a lifelong habit. It is not a relic of the past. It's something which is valuable, useful, and meaningful in the modern era. And, you know, it will set that tone. I think it's really important not to be condescending or harsh when you have somebody in the workplace who is, and I say the workplace, this could apply to any area of life where you find yourself occupying the same space of people who don't dress very well. I think you don't want to be condescending. You don't want to be unpleasant about it all. You know, let people observe the way which you carry yourself and let them look at that, drink it in, and realise that's how they would like to present themselves to the world, and they will follow. They will follow. I've had numerous examples told to me through my work on this channel that people who have decided to up the game, they've started wearing a sports jacket or a blazer to the workplace, and before you know it, first of all, they get those snidey comments from the guys in work who don't dress that way. And before they knew it, they noticed some of the men in the workplace were also starting to dress well, because they could see that by our protagonist dressing well, he was maybe having more opportunities in work. Maybe if you're a man who enjoys the company of women, the ladies start to make compliments. Ooh, you're looking smart today. All of these little things, and they want in on it, and they start to dress well. We think of the way that this has been done over the generations. I can mention but a few. People like James Bond, for instance. I know it's a fictional character. I know it's somebody who's often referred to in sartorial conversations like this. But James Bond, I think, has been the greatest example for dressing well for men of the last few generations. because he sometimes is the only well-dressed man that many of these young fellows in the modern era will see. And admittedly, his movies only come along once every 5 years these days. But he remains one of the most iconic characters of all time, who is very closely associated with wearing a suit or maybe a tuxedo. And, you know, people will often say, dressing like James Bond today, are you? If you want to encourage folks through example, you know, get them to watch James Bond and get them to make comments about the way that Bond dresses himself. And they'll soon start following. It's exactly what I did with my own son. My son, when he was about, I don't know, 10 onwards, I started to expose him to James Bond. Letting him watch, you know, the programs were a little bit old for maybe 10 years of age, but as he got a bit older, into his middle teens, we certainly allowed him to see the latter Bond films. And he, because as young men do, they like sports cars, they like sexy girls, they could appreciate James Bond for what he was, a hyper-confident man, and the clothing was part of that package. And my young lad, I'm absolutely sure that the fact that he likes wearing a suit these days, you know, and he went to his annual hockey club sports dinner last night. He wore a beautiful navy suit, which I used to own actually, and I outgrew it, but now he's, you know, like a younger version of me. He wore it last night. He looked like $1 million, and he felt like $1 million. This is how we get the young folks on board. Now, the next thing I think we can do to bring on that generation into the world of sartorial style is to offer encouragement. Give compliments at every opportunity, because when you notice a young fellow in your orbit of influence, whether it's a family member, you know, a nephew, a son, maybe it's somebody who goes to the same work as you, the same church as you, the same social group, maybe it's the son of a friend who you encounter at the odd barbecue, and you notice they're making a bit of an effort. They are trying a little bit, you know, they've put a sports jacket on to come to a special event. Maybe they're wearing a tie, and you can tell they're not sure about it. They perhaps look as if they feel a bit uncomfortable in these clothes which may be ever so slightly alien to them. Be the person who offers an encouraging compliment to these folks. And it can be something as simple as, wow, you're looking smart today, David. Looking like James Bond. Use those, you know, old tropes that we've just talked about, because it can be incredibly affirming to somebody who is uncertain about their appearance. If somebody older, more mature, with more expertise and skill in that field passes a compliment to them and says, you know, you're looking sharp, buddy. Well done. Or even a little bit of practical help. You know, maybe you see them and the tie doesn't look too great. The tie knot isn't perfect, right? Let's not sit in judgment. We don't go up to them and say, oh, you know, your bloody tie knot's a shambles, mate. You want to sort that out? What you want to do is go over and say, I couldn't help but notice, I can see you've gone for a 4 in hand or a half Windsor with your tie knot. It's a little bit askew, buddy. Let me give you a little bit of advice. This is what I do when I tie, you know, a half Windsor or a 4 in hand. You know, you want to get the knot in just such a size, whatever it may be. You know, give some advice about, you know, certain ties actually lend themselves better to maybe a 4 in hand than a half Windsor. Give them that practical advice which may be absent in their lives. You are that benevolent uncle who's passing the advice to the next generation. And, you know, it reinforces those good choices that they're making and brings them forward towards the next stage of dressing well. Maybe, you know, investing in a pocket square. Give them that advice. Ooh, I tell you what, you know, you look fantastic today. But I tell you what would be the cherry on the cake, a little pocket square. And you know what? It's not been beyond me in the past to take my own pocket square out and slip it into somebody else's pocket and say, there you go. Little gift from me, a start on your journey to being an intentionally well-dressed man. And let me tell you, that will go down like $1 million. They'll never forget it. And the next time you see them, they'll have that pocket square. You'll have started them off on a journey towards excellence. Now, my final little actionable tip for you is generally something I would reserve for somebody quite close in my orbit of influence, maybe a junior relative, maybe somebody who I speak to quite commonly, quite often, maybe the son of somebody I know quite well. And it would be small, tasteful style gifts. And it's very much like I just mentioned. You know, whereas I would perhaps make an impromptu gift of a pocket square to somebody whom I know is trying hard on their sartorial journey. If you know somebody who's starting off and they're making good strides in their efforts to become better dressed, give them a little gift. Now, it doesn't have to have high monetary value. It could be something as simple as a pocket square that you've made yourself out of an old shirt that you've cut up and created into a pocket square. And the point of that is, it's not actually of fiscal value, it's of sentimental value. You can tell them, do you know what? This white pocket square I'm giving you now came from a shirt that I wore on my wedding day, or on a shirt which I wore over a number of years during the high period of my professional life. And I cut it up and I made it into a few pocket squares when it wore out, and it has brought me great luck. And now I am passing one of those squares on to you for you to wear, for you to know that you're going to look great when you wear this, and it is going to bring you sartorial good fortune. Now, a little gift like that has no value, but it will resonate with that person forever. And I'm just using a pocket square as an example. It could be something like a nice quality leather belt if you want to spend a little bit of money. That's something which somebody can own for decades and always remember that it was passed on as a gift and something which will go forward with them in whatever clothing they wear. Because, you know, a belt transcends fashion, it transcends style. It's always going to be something which is useful. And if you want to make it a bit more perhaps cerebral, you know, if the person that you want to have this discussion with, to encourage them, you know that perhaps they like reading, they're a student, give them a book on style. Now, there's many that you could choose. I mean, one of the old classics is the Alan Flusser's book, Dressing the Man. It's hard to find a better book at a reasonable, accessible price point, which offers more advice for a young fellow. It's also a large book. It's impactful when you give it over. And, you know, if you package it along the lines of, I am passing on the knowledge which I took on years ago to you so that you can follow me and be an intentionally well-dressed, dapper man. It seems like such a wonderful gift to offer somebody. I've always thought giving books is a great gift anyway, because you're giving knowledge and you're giving excitement and the opportunity to, you know, go on an adventure in the pages of a book. But when it comes to a book which passes knowledge, it's a wonderful way to pass that sartorial knowledge. It is a gesture to the person where you're saying, this matters to me. You know, this item, it could be a belt, a pocket square, a set of old cufflinks. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be the book. It matters to me. Now I am giving it to you. I am handing on knowledge to the next generation, and I know you're going to make it count. So really, you know, if I was to sum this up, I would say when we're trying to encourage the next generation, it's not about clinging to the past. It's not about dressing in a certain way, because that's the way it's always been done. That's no good excuse to do anything, all right? What we want to sow the seeds of in the minds of the next generation is that I dress like this because it allows me to display more self-expression than you, even though you're standing there in your fancy, you know, sneakers, your sweatpants and your sweatshirt with the latest brand name on it. The clothes I'm wearing are imbued with quality. They're going to last 10 times longer than the clothes that you're wearing. They probably cost a similar price in reality, and there is a lot more self-expression here. You might walk the streets all day and never see somebody wearing the same tie, the same pair of trousers, the same sports jacket. I'm actually unique. You look like one of a herd. And if you can get that across, that self-expression gives you confidence in your appearance. It allows you to stride through life, you know, with pep in your step, and they can see that and understand it. They might get on board too. It's not about being the enforcers of a past generation, as I say. It's about encouragement, guidance, and even offering a gift to bring them on the path with you. I hope I've taken the opportunity to answer your question, RS4249. And, I've helped you in your endeavour to encourage those coming behind us. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe for more like this. Get on board with me. Ask me a question, drop it into the comments section or send me an email. And if you want to hear more from me than the videos that I leave here on this main channel, you can become one of my patrons, where you will benefit from the additional videos which I release exclusively for my patrons each week. The link to my patron pages are in the show notes below. I'd love to have you on the team. It costs but a tiny sum each month. So, from Oak Camp, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you again very soon.
I'm tired of waiting. How long have I been waiting here to hear the sound of your